already about the framework MVC and MVVM. And one more point, one-way binding and two-way binding. One-way binding, we discussed about interpolation, and property binding. That means one-way binding is generally read-only approach. That means you bind the data and any changes in it are not affected. Any changes in it are not affected in the model. We can do that by using interpolation. Interpolation actually it binds by using a data binding expression. Property binding so uses a square brace. That means already we discussed what is the difference between a property and attribute. Attribute binding. So yesterday we saw one point here. So that is property and attribute binding options. Okay. Yes, one more time, let's execute that. Fine. So how interpolation works, one point I told you, and difference between property and attributes also we discussed. Let's make it more clear actually. So interpolation. So generally interpolation is nothing but it is a technique so where the model data is binded to view by using a data binding expression. We generally bind by using a data binding expression. Bind to any attribute. You can directly bind to any attribute, right? So it dynamically evaluates a value and binds that value. That is the approach actually. Okay, let's see now. So first, what is interpolation, right? Interpolation is nothing but, so it is a data binding technique used by Angular to bind model data to view by using data binding expression that is this flower brace data binding expression, that is that flower brace. Actually it dynamically evaluates a value. It dynamically evaluates a value and binds to view. It dynamically evaluates a value and binds to the view. So the point here is it supports only one way binding, that is any change in view will not update the model. That is what actually the point about interpolation. So simply interpolation, how it actually works is syntax. So suppose we have public username is John and we need to attach it to element. Input type is equal to text and value is equal to data binding expression username. That's how we define. And in a hello, and we are displaying here a data binding expression username. That means whatever changes you make in the text box, these are not going to affect back into that particular property. That is what actually the data binding expression. Then what is advantage of this data binding expression is it can evaluate a value. And return the value. That means it can evaluate and return the value. So it can perform any particular operation. It can evaluate a value. That means it allows expression to handle any expression. Let's see one example how we can access and bind through interpolation technique. So simply what we are doing is to this component.ts, I am just creating a particular object. I am creating an object. So public product is an object. Okay. In the product object, so we are defining some name. And we are defining price. And we are defining some quantity. Okay. And manufactured. It is a date. And some value. You know, already we learned how to deal with the date values. Right, like this. Okay. And in stock. So in stock. So that is true. How do we define that? Right? That is the value we have defined. So now important here is how to get this and bind this data. How we can bind this to the UI.